So welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Business Maverick Show, where we're going to talk about the automotive industry. And I'd like to introduce today Ravi Sibal. And Ravi, do you want to give us a quick resume of what you've been doing in the automotive industry over the last couple of decades?
It's an interesting disruption. I love disruption because no one knows where it's going to go, right? It's not a presupposed outcome. And so everyone's trying to find their way through. And there's a little bit of kind of optimistic thinking goes on, right? Optimism bias. And I can't remember which company it was. Was it General Motors recently who pulled in Google, I think, to build their infotainment system, but by process excluded Apple and Apple AirPlay. And there was a big hoo-ha in the papers because it's like, wow, how does this sort of alienate probably 70% of your market who've all got an Apple iPhone by saying, no, we've had ours built by Google and it doesn't work with yours, but we've got a really good Google thing over here. But it's kind of, and many companies do this, they kind of go, but surely people will want to buy off of services from us. And it's like, no, I want to buy from the thing I carry with me all the time, which is the iPhone, right? So it's a fascinating place we're going to go there. You hinted earlier a little bit about the sort of transformation for the OEMs themselves, the manufacturers, around reskilling and roles and sort of, operating model and stuff like that. Where do you see that going? And I know there's no one answer for this, but you talked about the sort of top hat and skateboard kind of model. Where do you see an OEM like, any of the big, let's go for the big ones. Where do you see them going?
I see them having to fundamentally rethink what they do. I think you get to a place where you need to think fundamentally about the skills you're going to have inside and outside your organization. So you start very much with this, stratagem model that says, right, okay, these are the competencies I need inside my organization. These are the ones that I don't. And I think each provider in the space will be very different. Where you've got multi-brand houses, so the likes of VW, Audi, Porsche, that say, right, okay, we're going to have this modular approach and we're going to have some skills inside, some skills out. I think there are some fundamental pieces that need to play into that, and I think they need to go away and have a look at how that's going to work for them. I mean, classic example is what's happened with Cariad, the Volkswagen software house, effectively, that has had some quite negative press recently around redundancies, around how they're going to operate going forward. And I think there is a part of me that says that in-house development arm could be very, very brilliant, very, very, very good, a real step in the right direction for a lot of the automakers, because it's going to become a core competency. But it's a massive pivot for them. It takes a reskilling. It takes them to say, well, actually, we're not the right people for this. We don't really need a room full of 100 auto people, but we need some variety of skills that are going to bring us the right combination, some external insight to say, well, actually, we need these people in our organization to help us think through what skills we need where. I mean, I can see the auto industry splitting into two kind of areas, or maybe three. So you'll have your skateboard developers, for want of a better phrase. You'll have your top hat developers, and then you'll have intermediaries that do the software and the gubbins that sit in between. If that happens, that's assuming that we end up in this battery electric vehicle world that we're being guided to it. Where I'd like to see it is somewhere slightly different. I think that there is lots of space for a diverse set of fuels that drives a different set of outcomes for those OEMs. But that has got to be driven by a combination of policy, government policy, and those OEMs being in the room and saying, well, actually, we might have a better idea of where this needs to go. And potentially the fuel providers. I mean, you get BP, you get Shell, you get all the others in the room and go, right, well, let's have a conversation about what you need and have this sensible join up. It feels like I'm talking about utopia. It feels like there's that conversation that needs to be had. It probably is at some level, but it just doesn't feel like it's ready. I mean, it's like you said before. It feels a little bit like we're premature in our thinking, and I think some of that comes out in the products that we're seeing, not only from a charging infrastructure perspective, but also from a vehicle perspective. I mean, if you look at the level of charge that we're getting in vehicles today and the problems that people are seeing in real world, it's a real challenge. I mean, people, unless they see 400-500 miles charge on their vehicle that is consistent and not weather dependent and all those other factors, I think they're going to resist this. And you're already seeing retail demand fall for those cars, and that's what's having an impact on second-hand prices.
Yeah, that range anxiety is still one for me, I must admit. It's, we do lots of short journeys, and you go, well, one of my cars could really work then. You say, every now and then we do a long journey, like, oh, hang on a second, I never forget, about a year or two ago on Netflix, I think they did Long Way Up, which was the, Ewan McGregor, Charlie Borman, and they did it on electric Harleys. And of course, it was fascinating because the first couple of episodes were all about range anxiety. I mean, they're like, how far can we go? Oh my God, I've got 20 miles to go and I've got 7 on the machine. And they actually had to go ahead of them and put chargers in. And then they actually literally, unfortunately, had to take, with the crew, a trailer with a big diesel generator on it to charge. Charge bikes is slightly ironic.
It is ironic. It really is. And I do think that we are halfway down that road of thinking about how it's going to work. I mean, I was watching a piece on YouTube a couple of days ago, and it was talking about the amount of renewable energy that we have versus the global demand. And renewable energy globally, it said, and forgive me if I get this slightly wrong, all the renewable energy that we have globally is 10% of the increased amount that we've had over the last 10 years.
Wow.
So we think that renewable energy is an answer. I'm not sure it is. I think we are much closer to a world where actually we're going to go back to nuclear. We're going to start looking at oil and gas as part of the mix. You've got to look at, global markets. I mean, if you look at what China has done over the last 25 years, and what it's doing now, it is still using coal. And India's going, well, we want to do what China did. So how are we going to achieve that without utilising energy density? Energy density means coal, gas, oil. Those are the things that are going to drive its economy. And it's not going to turn around and say, well, okay, one sec, the UK, Germany, everyone else has done it. We'll just sit here and relax. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that what you've got to do is work out what the mix is and how quickly you can make that transition. But that takes some big thinking. It's not going to take top-down regulation to make that happen, because it's, you're asking for an outcome without giving someone the tools. You're saying, make me a table, but I'm not going to give you a chisel and a hammer and all the other things that you're going to need to make it work.
Yeah.
It feels like there's more work to do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we can't leave this conversation without talking about the commercial model that's changing. Some people don't realise it, some people do, but that every dealer you go to, Peugeot dealer, Renault dealer, is not actually owned by Peugeot or Renault. They're owned by a completely different company. And so most of these OEMs have actually been, to date, pretty much a B2B. We sell to the dealers and the dealers sell to the customers. It was interesting when we worked into one of the automotive companies we're working with, and it was interesting because I said, I've had 9 of your cars in my lifetime and you have no idea who I am. And that was the truth, right? I'm a repeat, massive champion of that brand. I had no idea who I was, right? They couldn't market to me directly, no personal branding, all that kind of stuff. So B2B's changing, and partly prompted by COVID, when you couldn't go to the dealer. So everyone went, well, let's let people buy on websites, and suddenly, okay, people did like buying on websites. That's interesting. But it's moving from B2B towards sort of B2C, but more towards that, not fully in some areas and different markets. So what are the implications of that?
I think the implications are quite profound. So, I mean, it all depends on how the relationship between the OEM and the national sales organisation stroke dealer work. Now, as you said, if you go into a dealership in the UK, it might not be a Peugeot dealership. It might be whatever brand. It may be multi-franchise, which is another interesting factor, because a lot of these brands take multi-franchise. So they might take a Porsche and a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and stick them together in a dealership. Now, that's the most interesting scenario, because I look at the motivation of the people in the scenario. So I look at the salesman, and the salesman doesn't really care if he sells any particular brand. He cares that he sells a car. And in the UK, we might have a customer that is aware of the brand, that's aware of the heritage, aware of what's going on. But in some of the other markets globally, they don't know and they don't care. I mean, I've heard stories of people walking in, being in a dealership and having this person walk in, customer, very, very pleased to be there. I want a white car. What have you got that's white? Don't care anything else. I just want it to be white and 2 doors. Great. They don't care if it's a Lamborghini, a Bentley, a Ferrari. Don't care. And that is a particular set of behaviour and a viewpoint that they say, I want something premium. I don't understand the heritage of those brands. All I care about is the fact that it's fit for purpose for me right now. And that's quite a different scenario. We're talking again about the kind of B2B to C piece. So that ownership of the customer and that relationship, that first-hand relationship, traditionally, certainly in the luxury sector, has been based on knowledge. And that's an intimate knowledge of that individual customer, repeat customer, all of that stuff. So I talked a little bit about Bentley earlier on. Some of the stuff that they did was around, that dealer principle, knowing these 1,000 people that will buy a car from him. Now, there's some analytics that says, well, actually, there's 12.8 million people globally that can afford a Bentley. Yet they sell around 16,000 a year. That tells me that they're hitting a minute fraction of their business. The question is, how do they get closer? Now, for me, when I started to do, I didn't talk about it before, but I went back to Bentley and was part of their customer centricity program. And one of the things that was really forefront in my mind was propensity to buy data, looking at that individual customer, understanding where they were, understanding their journey. And that's the bit that I think will change. So traditionally, you've had this relationship where, as I say, the dealer will drive that sale. Mm. If the OEMs want to be close to the customer, they need to get in at the prospect stage. And that's a place where they've never been. So that means a completely different set of skills. That means a completely different relationship with the customer. And that means they have to know where those customers are. So, traditionally it's been, I'm at the golf club, I'm at the particular, wherever it is, the shooting, wherever it is, I don't do these things. But wherever it is that the place where your customers are? You don't know. But what you might be able to do using data is understand more about those individuals. Are they, if I were to take a particular customer profile, for each market, I might have 10 different customer profiles and say, well, actually, some of my customers might be fly fishing experts. Great. Well, I need to be down at the angling club or I need to be over here. But you can only get that data based on doing some analytics, using LinkedIn data, Facebook data, Instagram, all of the other tools that we've got out there, using companies' house data to say, actually, how do I triangulate on not only the people that could buy, but the people that might buy and then the people that are going to buy. Yeah. And be very specific about how I'm going to get there. The fear that OEMs have always had is I can spend a lot of money, waste a lot of time on people that aren't going to be able to buy my product, certainly at the top end. That's got to shift. But you've got to use a different way of approaching the market. And by investing in those data tools, by investing in data transformation and thinking very much about how do I get on that journey? Where do I go and meet my customer? What are the business outcomes that I'm trying to look for? That's how they're going to drive change in that customer centricity agenda. I think it's really important that they start to think about the customer first, data around that customer, the relationship they want to have, the mapping out of the journey. What are the touch points? Are they physical? Are they, on the telephone? Are they digital? Are they in an app? How are you going to communicate with them? And how are you going to make that a meaningful interaction every time you speak to them?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's something we talk about in my book, the Future Business Formula, which is around you need to know where your customer is because they might not be where you think they are. And it reminds me of things like, Land Rover sort of advertising and being sponsors of things like Burley horse trials and stuff like that. Well, you need a Land Rover to pull your horse box, right? And someone told me, and I don't know if this is true, but someone said, where do Rolls-Royce sell their cars? And it was like, car shows, and no, not at all. And it was like, it couldn't really work out. And someone said that they sell them at air shows where people go and buy private jets because those are the kind of people that could afford a Rolls Royce and might even impulse buy a Rolls Royce at that kind of event. So knowing where your customers are really key. And like you say, something they've never really had to think about before. And we've done a lot with the sort of next generation coming through and stuff like that. And they are in completely different places to where our generation maybe is. And so trying to keep abreast of where your customer is and trying to get in front of them is really, really difficult and something fascinating. Okay. And it wouldn't be, let's tackle the sort of the big tech question that's around at the moment, which is around AI and stuff like that. How do you see AI playing into the automotive industry over the next 5-10 years?
I think AI is going to play an important part in a couple of aspects. Just to start off, I think automotive design is going to be massively impacted by AI. I think some of the abilities to optimize design are going to come out. Certainly battery tech and actual vehicle design through design into engineering, into manufacturing engineering, are going to get disrupted in that space. You can see that starting to happen now. You can see some of the aspects of that coming through. Project management in auto is definitely going to hit that space, and then we're going to be in the space where it's going to impact customers. Now, this is really a really interesting space, which we kind of tackle in one of the papers that's coming out around AI that'll be coming out shortly. And that aspect of how do you go down that AI transformation journey is really important. So you've got to think through what data you're going to put in the AI and what results you're going to get out of it. Because the whole nature of AI transformation versus a traditional transformation is that if I'm putting an ERP system or a HCM system, I'm doing that against a set of known outcomes. So I know I've got a predictable set of processes. I've got a value stream that goes end to end, and it starts with an input, an output, and it has some steps in the middle. The whole point of AI is that the output is not predictable. The output needs to be an improvement on where you are when you started. Otherwise, you wouldn't be using AI to improve the process. You can use automation and robotics to do some stuff in the middle, but actual improvement in design has to come from a space where you don't understand that outcome. So the big question for me is, where are you going to put that AI? What are the use cases? And how are you going to use that to add value to your business without adding risk? I also think that there is a set of things around the corpus of information that you put in. So I've got this growing concern around GDPR, data that's going in. How do you manage that? How do you know where it's processed? How do you know where it's going to come out the far end? How do you know data security is being managed? There's loads of topics around that where I'm not sure. And part of that is because it's so new and I'm learning. And part of that is because I can see the risks from programs that I've done before, where that even the programming or the configuration of some of the moves that I've seen go to cloud and other places have not been ideal. And that then leaves you in a place where going, if it's a controlled system and I know the start and know the finish, and I've got some fairly set processes, can end up with data leakages and information concerns. What was going to happen with AI? Because I fundamentally don't have the tools to grapple with what the outcomes are. So how that's going to work in automotive, I think, is an interesting one. I think we will obviously see some of the core use cases that are getting some traction now. So in accounting, legal, other spaces around admin. Is it going to get towards customer data? Is it going to get towards some of the more complex areas? I don't know. I strongly encourage any OEMs out there that are thinking about this to get some people around you to really think about that problem statement before you start diving in. We've seen examples with Samsung and other players where they've put a set of information in, and before you know, it's out in the cloud. It's out on the web and it's gone, and you have no control over it.
Yeah.
What do you do?
No, in fact, that's a fascinating subject. That's an industry being disrupted and no clear path through where you're going to end up, coupled with a technology which has no clear path of where it's going to go, and trying to merge those two together. Who knows what's going to happen? So that was fantastic, Ravi. Thank you so much for the insight from your many years in the automotive industry, and it's been fascinating hearing about an industry which is going through disruption, not only through its business model but through the industry itself and the technology. So thank you very much for being on the Business Maverick Show, and we'll see you next time.